In this tutorial, we're going to really get started working with the processing code. So first we're going to take a look at the coordinate system and shapes. And so as I mentioned in the previous tutorial, I based my video tutorials off of some of the textual tutorials on the processing website. And so this one is based off of the coordinate system and shapes. So the first most important thing I think to understand when we're working with our code in processing, because it is, as I explained previously, to be used as kind of a digital sketchbook, you need a way to reference where you want to draw things on your, say, canvas. So we'll kind of think of as our resulting program as a canvas, and we're going to paint or draw on the canvas. So when you think of a coordinate system, like from math, you think of the normal Cartesian coordinate system where the origin, the 0, 0 coordinate is in the center. So for processing on the computer, the origin is going to be in the upper left-hand corner, and so on your left, on your vertical, is going to be your y-axis, and on the horizontal is the x-axis, increasing in the downward and in the rightward direction. And so in this tutorial, we're going to go over these basic simple shapes. They're classified under the 2D primitive shapes. So if you ever go to look back at the reference or anything like that, that's what they're classified under. So it's the point, the line, the rectangle, and the ellipse. So maybe before you actually get started coding, or you have an idea of how you want this to look or how you want to set up your canvas, maybe you want to draw a picture first, so that way you can get a better idea of where on your kind of coordinate system you want to lay out or you want to place any of your shapes or drawings. Like when I had the idea in mind, I went ahead and sketched it out by hand beforehand, so that way I would have a better idea of where I wanted to lay everything out once I got to coding. So you all may want to kind of sketch something out like this. So as you can see, I have my y-axis and my x-axis, and just so I can get an idea of where I want to lay everything out. Now, as you saw on the previous tutorial, and we'll jump back to the code here in a moment, there are some variables where we have the height and the width that stores the display height and the display width of the device that's being used. And so we can set these variables so that way we have that measurement of what this value is, because we know up here we're at 0, 0 as our origin, and as these increase, once we get all the way to the length of our display, or our display height, this is a maximum number, and so we can store that number. That way we can reference any place from 0 up to the height, and again from 0 over to the width. Now we'll go ahead and move over to the code and get back into the Android processing IDE and practice coding some of these drawings. Okay, so moving back over to our Android tablet, we're going to open the Android processing development environment again, just like we did yesterday. And I feel like in the previous tutorial that I went a little bit fast as far as just the whole programming aspect goes, maybe for people who have never programmed at all before. So I just want to go over a little bit of terminology, just basic programming terminology, before we go farther. So there's two functions that we got started with, which was our setup function and our draw function. And the parentheses that are to the right of the names of those functions is where we would write in any parameters if we needed to pass parameters to this function. The void is the return type of the function. So every function has a return type. If it doesn't return anything, then it's void. And like we're calling the function background, although we're defining the function's setup and draw. The processing programming language has background defined for us already. And so it takes 3 parameters, with those values being integers of red, green, and blue. And the definition of the functions that we define, the setup and the draw, are defined within those curly braces. So you'll see those curly braces define not only a function definition, but different blocks of code, which you'll see later on. We'll use them in this tutorial to define for loops. So now we're going to go ahead and get our sample code for this tutorial and add it in here to this code we already started. Oh, and I didn't, this is the code we started in the last tutorial. If it hadn't been opened already when we opened our IDE, we just would have came over here to that menu, and it's always under Sketches, and you'll find it right there and can open it that way. So we're going to go to the sample code so that way we can add the new sample code to our code, to our program for this tutorial. So let's go ahead and go over to Chrome, and we should still have open the folder of the link that we opened in the last tutorial, which gives us a link to all of our sample code and resources that we need. Our tutorial outline and everything's on there. So if you choose to not start coding until after we complete the tutorials, then you can use this code, which is the complete code from all the tutorials put together. But if you code along with me, which I encourage you to do, then we're going to go over here to week 1, and for each week, each tutorial, I will have that piece that we added progressively added to the code base, the code sample that we have here. So we're going to go ahead and download the code for tutorial 2. And once that file is downloaded, we can grab it off of the notification bar there at the top. And when we tap on it, we should open it with our text editor. And if it's not automatically opened by your text editor, it may ask you which program you would like to open it with. So just choose the text editor. Okay, so in the draw function is where we've added code. So within the curly braces of the draw function, and if you decide to grab all of that code at once, then that's fine. Just make sure you stay between those curly braces of the draw function. You can copy and paste everything and move it over there. I'm going to do it little by little so that way we can see what each piece of code does. I can demonstrate that for you. So if you want to move along with me, then I'm just going to show you how we'll just double tap to highlight, move our cursor, and at the top there select copy. Now we have it on our clipboard, and we can go back over to our development environment, and just the same as we had over there inside the draw, hold down our fingers so that we can paste it. So here what I've done is I defined some variables just to help me move around and know where I want to draw on the screen. So like I showed my sketch before, and again, if you just think about that coordinate system, 0 is going to be all the way to the left. And right is going to be basically the width of our display. So all the way to the right is the width of our display, all the way to the right hand side of our canvas, let's say. And I'm just going to start about 30 counts down. And the horizontal center would be the display width divided by 2, because that would be halfway across the screen. And the vertical center would be the display height divided by 2, because that would be about halfway down the screen. So the first things that we're going to draw is we're going to make a border on the left side of the screen. So it's basically going to be like half circles down the left side of the screen. So this is just a sample that I've provided to you all that I started, but I encourage you to make changes to it and play around with it to see what the different capabilities are. So for the ellipse, your parameters, this is your x coordinate, then your y coordinate, and then your width and your height. So this is a circle because the width and height are the same size, but otherwise, you would have one longer than the other, being a real ellipse. And so the first one in the corner I kind of have sticking out a little bit, and then the ones that follow, I move them to the left too. So this way they're just indented just slightly. Now this is a for loop. This is probably the most structure that we'll use in the code. And so what a for loop is there's 3 sections to it, and you'll see it's separated by semicolons here. So the first is an initialization where you'll initialize your counter variable to a start value. And as long as that count variable is below this value, whatever value you have your stop value, it'll increment. So it'll start at 0 and then go to 1 to 2 to 3. And as long as it's below, as long as it stays below height divided by 30, it'll keep on going through and incrementing. And it increments after it executes this block of code. Now I stop at height divided by 30 because since our ellipses are 30 high, we should be able to fit that amount in the height of our display. And so now we'll execute this and take a look at how this code works. And again, we'll push install and then open. And there we are, the same screen with those half circles all the way down the screen. Okay, so let's go back and get some more to add into this code, some more new stuff that we're going to work with to add into this code. So just go down a couple spaces so that way we know, and let's come back to our text editor, and I'm going to grab the next block, I think, to the line. So we're going to draw this big frame box and a line. So now we'll go back to our development environment and paste that in there. And just hold down and paste. And so you'll see here again, I define some variables, and we're going to use a rectangle which has the similar parameters as the ellipse, the x coordinate, y coordinate, width, and height. And then I define some variables to be able to reference where I want to draw that box, again according to the width and the height of the screen as well as the screen center. And I didn't mention when defining those variables the integer and float. So normally if it's just a whole number, it's an integer. If it's going to be a decimal number, where I use here the 0.75, then it'll be a float. But otherwise an int, if you're defining any numeric variables, that should be fine. And again, the line, it has a similar structure actually to what you might use in school, where you have x1, y1, x2, y2 of where it's going to be drawn from point A to point B on the line. So we'll do the same thing again to run that program, and here we see the result, the box with the line